This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Mettle Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they could still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website and get started on the journey to a more confident and successful athlete with Mental Mettle Coaching. Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mental Mettle Coaching. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm here with my guest today, Mackenzie Nelson, and this is an episode I'm really excited about. I've had a little bit of a conversation with Mackenzie about what she does and what she's about, and I'm just to be able to talk about mental health and, quite honestly, the stigma around mental health and what we can do about that is it means a lot to me to be able to talk about that. And I know that this is going to be a great conversation. So that's my way of saying welcome to the show, Mackenzie.
So happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start with, I want you to start. I know you go around and you do some speaking at schools and different places. So I know you're going to feel really comfortable with kind of like telling your story. So I want to start there. If you can just tell me your story and why you started the Stay Another Day.
Yeah.
And how you got into that.
Yeah. So my mental health journey pretty much started when I was a junior in high school, is when my sadness turned into depression, I would say. I had a first hour study hall in high school. And the night before coming to school, I had making a plan to end my life. And to this point, everybody just knew me as an upbeat, happy person. But my sadness turned into depression my junior year. And then it got to the point where I couldn't stop crying in front of people. I couldn't make it through an entire softball practice without tearing up. And people didn't really know how to approach that. And so my first hour of class, I went to school crying. I wasn't going to go to school that day, but my dad told me I had to go to school. And I was so embarrassed to be crying in front of everybody that day. So I was texting my dad, please call me out of school, and he wouldn't. So I tried to get myself together. I made a joke out of it that day. They kept asking me what was wrong, and I would just keep laughing and trying to avoid the subject. Then I went to my second hour class. I still couldn't get myself together. And I actually ran into one of my teachers in the hallway, a former teacher I had my freshman year. And she took me into her classroom. She sat me down. She didn't ask too many questions about what was going on with me. But I just remember she provided me with comfort and I felt safe. And then I still couldn't stop crying. So she walked me to my guidance counselor's office. And there I was provided with a space for the rest of the school day that I just felt very comfortable in. I felt seen. It felt like this was the first time in my life people saw the sad, depressed Mackenzie, not the upbeat, energetic, outgoing, determined at practice Mackenzie. So I felt seen that day. And moving forward from there, I got in touch with a therapist. I got put on some medication for mental health. And I really just tried to keep myself distracted and busy with softball, with school, with workouts. And so that helped for a while. And then my senior year of high school, I actually graduated in 2020. So it was COVID years. Pretty crazy times.
Which, I mean, that's a whole nother, it adds a whole nother level of everything.
Yes.
Right? It really did. And yeah.
Yeah. And so that winter break, I found being an athlete when it was over the summer and I had tournaments every weekend, practice every day. I was in a lot better headspace because I didn't have time to think about my mental health. And so that winter break, we had off season. We didn't have many practices around Christmas break. And I felt really, really down again. So I started turning to crafting, which has always been something that was therapeutic for me. I sewed some headbands and scrunchies and decided to start up a little business called Mackenzie Page. And what I didn't know is that COVID was going to hit like 3 months later and we were going to be in a pandemic and need face masks. So I sewed over 3,000 face masks. I had a listing on Etsy that really blew up Mackenzie Page. I'm still suffering from mental health, depression pretty bad at this time, but I didn't really have time to think about it. It was just a huge distraction for me. So that started my entrepreneurial journey. I tried to stay really optimistic in hopes that college would be a new environment, a new space for me, and I would be doing better. I moved to Rockford and played softball up there for a little bit. And I went into this really successful program. So the 6 years prior to this, they had won nationals back to back for 6 years straight. So when we got there, we all had the same goal in mind of we're winning nationals. This is what we're working to. And we had a crazy practice schedule. It was pretty intense. So I didn't have time to think about my mental health yet again. We ended up winning nationals. It was an awesome experience. I'll remember that day for the rest of my life and all the memories I made my freshman year. But then I came home over the summer, didn't have much to do. That time on my hands led to suicidal ideations again. Got back in touch with therapy, ended up going to my sophomore year. Different living situation wasn't too great for me. I ended up having suicidal ideations while I was there, and I didn't feel like they took my mental health seriously. I had a really bad breakdown one night. And so the next morning, I turned in all my equipment because I felt as if they weren't taking my mental health seriously at this school. And that was at 6 a.m. And by 9 a.m., I was on the Heartland Community College softball team. So just jumping from one thing right into the next. Like I said, I just kept doing that to try to keep myself busy. Heartland was absolutely amazing. I love the coaching staff. I still talk to my coach from there to this day. But even after practicing with the girls, being in the new environment, I went to bed that night and I was having those same exact thoughts. So I talked to my dad about it and my sister. We sat down and we decided that it was time for me finally to get professional help. I'd been going to therapy and taking medicine, but the thoughts just wouldn't go away and I didn't want to be here. So I decided to admit myself to a mental hospital. And I basically went to the ER. I told them I needed a mental health evaluation. And from there, they did a screening process to determine my overall safety to myself. And I was there for over a day, probably waiting to get admitted. And they didn't actually admit me at this point because everywhere within a 5-hour radius was completely full. And that was insane to me.
Yeah, it really is. I don't even know where to go from that. Like to feel like that is, it's a helpless feeling to be asking for help and then not being able to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it felt like at this point, I finally took that huge step of being like, I need help. And I got sent back home. And thankfully for me, I have an amazing dad and sister that I was living with at the time. And they checked on me every night. They let me have sleepovers with them and I was okay. So for the next 3 to 4 months, I was just really close leaning on those people. But then the suicidal ideations came back, went through the same process. I actually did get admitted this time. And the mental hospital was absolutely life-changing for me. When I was there, hearing other people talk about their mental health journey so openly really inspired me to be vulnerable and realize that there's strength within asking for help. And that was something I didn't realize at that point in my life. And that was a big stepping stone for me for wanting to speak on mental health for the first time. But I really pushed myself when I was there to go to every single different type of therapy. when I went there, I finally wanted to get better. And that was definitely like a turning point in my life. So then I got out of the hospital, went back into softball. The Heartland Athletics was really great to me at that time in understanding. But then about 3 months later, not even, maybe 2 most, I was playing softball. I was playing third base. And I took a line drive straight to my face. And it knocked me unconscious. And this was my 6th concussion. So I was on bed rest. I could not even shower by myself. It split my gums in half. Really crazy. I have all my teeth, but it split my gums in half. And yeah, so concussions can affect your mental health too, because it literally changed the chemistry of my brain. So I just gotten on this upwards path of being so great mentally, and then this happened. So I resorted back to, crafting or little things that could keep my mind busy. And I started sketching up some mental health quotes. Day another day was what I told myself growing up. From a very young age, just a mindset of taking it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, trying to focus on that little picture, because the bigger picture can be overwhelming. And so when I was sketching out these designs, I realized that stay another day could stand for sad. And I thought that was just so awesome, because that's typically an emotion people steer away from. The idea of the brand is wearing your heart on your sleeve and letting people know being vulnerable is a good thing. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to struggle with mental health. So I released about 6 mental health awareness hoodies on Mackenzie page under like a stay another day line. I tried to go back to play softball. That did not work out too great for me. So then when I ended up dropping out of college, I ended up going full on with stay another day. And that's pretty much where I'm at today.
Yeah, the story is, there's so many things I want to, there's just so many things. I'm taking notes as you go here, and just some follow-ups I want to go and just talk about this. But I'm kind of going to just go in order, and some of the things that I noticed there. So when you're talking, you kind of started your story with just a day in your junior year, but it had to have started before that, right?
Yeah.
It had to be a slow progression to that point that it was, a day where you couldn't even go through class without crying, right?
Yeah, for sure. So my parents got divorced when I was in 5th grade, and I was super, super close with my mom up to this point in my life. And then when my parents had divorced, my mom wasn't really in my life anymore. So that took a really, really big toll on me. Just kind of being the girl growing up without a mom present, kind of got picked on a little bit for that. And then my junior year is when she started coming back in the picture. And so that definitely took a toll on it too. But then just high school in general, when I go back and I speak at schools, NCHS, I go to NCHS all the time. They're so amazing. But when I go back there and I was first talking about it, they're like, we would have never imagined like this was happening to you, or, you were someone that might have gotten like bullied. I'm not saying I definitely got bullied, but I definitely got picked on a little bit. And a lot of my in-school problems were coming from comments other people were making, or people who were DMing me on Instagram. Then when I blocked the account, another one would come up. And it was always like, Mackenzie, we never thought this would happen to you. I was very, very focused in school. I cared so much about school, straight A student. Softball, my sophomore year, I was starting on varsity. I was very, very determined. I was waking up at 4:30 every morning to go lift. I was very driven in school. And so they never thought it would happen to me. And I think that's why I had such a hard time speaking about it, and why it got so bad, because it was kind of like embarrassing to me. I didn't want to admit that it was happening to me. And from their perspective, I didn't look like somebody it would have happened to.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something. If you're a type A type person and you're very focused, you want to really. I see it. It happens. I think we're starting to change that idea around it, where you see somebody that's like, oh, really successful, really good grades, really good athlete, and go, well, they can't be struggling mentally. And I'm like, to me, now that I'm getting into this and talking to more of those kids like that, those are the ones that I worry about more, because a lot of times it takes to be able to stay at that level. It takes a lot mentally to be able to do it. And also you start to create either yourself, your others, or like you said, you go into a program that already has expectations, and you hold those expectations up above your head, and you're like, I have to get to these expectations or else.
Yeah. And two, I think a big part of my problem was the only sort of confidence or like validation I felt like I got was academic success or athletic success. And those things combined put even more pressure on me when I was already, having suicidal ideations or feeling depressed. And all of that mixed together, I think I never spoke about it. And that's why it got to the point of me having suicidal ideations when I was 16, 17.
Yeah. And it also matters. I think that's another idea. We're getting into this mental stigma and what mental health is a lot. I mean, part of it doesn't matter what causes those negative thoughts to start, because we all have things that can start negative thoughts, right? But the problem is if we don't find a way to get those under control, even the smallest thing can start to snowball and snowball and snowball until you get to the point where it's like, so I didn't get a B on this test. It's really not a big deal. But if your mindset is in the wrong way, it is a big deal. Yeah. And that's the hard part for people to understand that haven't been there. It's when you have those expectations and those things you want for yourself, it can feel like everything for you.
Yeah. And then when you're not achieving that, it's like, this is the end of the world. Yes.
Absolutely.
There, felt that.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. I also you keep talking about how you would find something else to do so you didn't have to think about your mental health. And while we all have to have hobbies, we have to have things to keep us busy, and we have to have these things that we get in this flow, it's really healthy for us. The way you're saying it is almost like this was a negative thing because I never stopped to think about my mental health. I didn't have to address it if I was busy.
Yeah. I always thought distractions were just like a coping mechanism at the point, and they are to an extent, but then there comes a time where you actually have to sit down and process those things. So I was always like crafting or doing this, but now I've kind of switched that to like mindful distractions, I like to call them. So like, for example, when I'm going on a walk, instead of listening to music, I'm just thinking about my day or thinking about how I can better myself. And I also journal a lot. I'm still doing those things. I still love crafting, I can't really work out, but I can still go on walks and stuff. And I still do those things, but I always mix in some sort of mindfulness activity where it's like a check-in, like, how's Mackenzie doing today? And I journal all the time. I talk about journaling on every platform we have. It's something that has helped me tremendously. No matter how bad my day is, I'll always wrap it up with positive affirmations.
So I've got this idea whenever I suggest journaling a lot to the athletes that I work with. And I think it's really good for somebody who, if you're the type of person who goes to bed at night and like can't shut off, can't shut things off, right? Which I'm just guessing, talking to you, that's the type of person I was. It's you go to bed at night and you might have been busy during the day, but when the head hits the pillow and the mind just wants to go and all these things. To me, I use this metaphor when I work with athletes and stuff. I feel like whenever our minds are wandering, I see it as like a big bowl of cooked spaghetti. Okay. So like you'll follow one thought and it'll bump into another thought and it'll go into and it's just this big mess of thoughts. And I like to say that journaling lets you sit down with that big bowl of spaghetti and take one strand at a time and think that thought through and what it really means. And I know that's a silly metaphor, but it helps me understand. And that's what journaling does for me, is to take those ideas. Let's take a thought through to the end. What does that mean for me? What do I want to do with that? And then let's talk about another one. But rather than just let your mind racing, because our minds can go a lot of places. That to me, that's when it was at night, right? Mm-hmm. When I was really struggling with mental health for a while, I really struggled to sleep. I would spend hours just in bed, not sleeping, thinking, and journaling really, really helps me do that.
Yeah.
Like get away from that.
Yeah. Exact same thing pretty much. When I would lay down at night, that was finally like the first time I was still for the entire day. And then it's like, okay, now the anxiety's coming, the overthinking. I'm overthinking every encounter I had this entire day. Does everybody hate me? Like, it would get pretty bad. So journaling and like breath work would definitely help me.
Yeah. Both of those two are phenomenal things. I suggest a lot. There's a lot of research out there. One of those ideas they call, if you know the word rumination, they talk about rumination, how whenever you're thinking about the things you should have done. Yeah, I say rumination is thinking about the things you've done better, or the things that you think you messed up, and also thinking about the things you're going to mess up, right? So none of those are mindful, right? It's all about the past and the future. And there's a lot of research out there that rumination, if you spend too much time in that rumination, it is a strong precursor to some serious mental health problems, like what starts to be anxiety, starts towards a depression, and then that, starts working to suicidal ideation, things like that.
Yeah.
that rumination and just letting yourself stew in your own thoughts there is something you have to get a handle on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then also it was kind of the idea you talked about going to, I love that you said that too. You're like, hey, I'm going to go to college and it's going to be fine because it's going to be a new environment. Right. Mm-hmm. And that idea there, I think a lot of people thinks they're looking for the next thing. Well, if I just get out of this bad situation, it'll be perfect. It'll be fine. And what they don't realize is that there are a lot of times they're the common denominator in their own problems.
Definitely.
Right. It's still you with some mental health problems going on to college. It's not going to fix everything.
Yeah. I feel like I kind of just got out of that mindset probably within the last year. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate where I was at, but I was always just like, what's next? And I really don't know why this is. I talk about it in therapy, but I think it's because I was so used to always being in a bad mental space. I'm like, once I get to this place, it'll get better. Once I get to this place, it'll be better. Which I do agree that like environment can definitely change. But at the end of the day, if you don't feel good on the inside, nothing is going to change no matter where you go.
No, I think it's, it has to be something you address. And then I loved also, and that leads me into what you said there about, I believe that it is more of a sign of strength to ask for help than it is to not ask for help.
Yeah, that was something that completely switched like the flip for me. I know during the group therapy when I was in the hospital, it really, really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Just a lot of different people coming from a lot of different backgrounds and hearing them so openly talk about their mental health. It was the moment for me I realized that other people struggle with mental health. And now when I tell people, like, you're not the only person struggling with that, I don't say that to belittle the person, but I say it more. And I found comfort in the sense that I wasn't crazy. Like, there's other people in the world that are feeling the exact same way as me. And guess what? They're right here taking steps to get better. I can do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And there's so much strength in asking for help is probably the biggest thing I say all the time, because there really is so much strength within it.
It is. And I understand it. I get it. I understand the stigma and people think what they're going to think of me. And you really start to worry about what others think, which is honestly, we make up more of that than we think.
Yeah.
We just do. Or it's just a good excuse.
Yeah. I still struggle with that too. Sometimes I get moments where I get super, super anxious and overthink. And it's not even that I care about how people perceive me for any sense. Like, I feel very secure and confident in myself, but I'll think about little situations like, oh my gosh, they're thinking this. But then I have to think back to myself. I'm like, am I looking at this person and thinking about the tiniest thing they're doing? And I'm like, no, they're not doing the same for me. So that's something that's definitely helped me when it comes to that, because I still have days where I have really bad anxiety sometimes. Yeah,
it's so much. People aren't thinking about other people aren't thinking about me as nearly as much as I think they are, right? And it's and that's a good thing and a bad thing, but it's like you gotta do what's best for you, regardless of what others are doing and thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
So talk to me about. I want to get back into how athletics, because most of my stuff is around athletics and the mental health around athletics. You were having all these issues throughout high school and into college, but you're still also playing at a high level of competition.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be hard for people to understand because it takes, you have to be mentally tough when you're playing softball, when you're playing at a high level, you got to competing, you got to get after it, but you're still having these issues. How did you deal with both of those together, and what's the connection or what's the disconnect in the way your thoughts when you're doing? Yeah.
So I think that, like I said, I was someone who was very, very insecure growing up. And I think the only time I felt confident or like had validation was through athletics. And I think that's why it pushed me to work so hard. But then it got to the point where softball wasn't my escape anymore, because I had so much pressure on myself. Like, yes, coaches were putting pressure on me, definitely in college, but I think more so I was putting an insane amount of pressure on myself. And then it just got so overwhelming. I would literally hyperventilate at practice. And a big reason why I didn't really say anything for so long is I had so many coaches that would see that happen, see me crying at practice, not a single word. And it was like painfully obvious that I was struggling really bad with mental health, and they were seeing that and they didn't ask anything about it. So I thought in my head that they looked at that as a weakness. And, that's why I got moved down the batting lineup, or, that's why I'm not starting at my favorite position anymore. And so that really sucked. Same thing when
I'm gonna interrupt here. They probably did see it as a weakness.
Yes.
And that's probably why you moved down. And that's why you didn't play as much. And they are completely wrong in how they handled that.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't know the people, I don't know the situation, but if that's what's going on with you and that's their reaction, that is something it's okay for us to speak out about.
Yeah. I would say it wasn't even about softball, though. It was a thing like, yes, I would obviously get upset when I didn't perform well, but that wasn't why I was crying during practice. I was crying because I was dealing with suicidal ideations, and I was thinking about what I was going to do when I got home, that this might be my last day playing softball. But I think it took me until probably transferring to Heartland that I realized mental toughness isn't the same thing as being like mentally strong. I don't know how to exactly word this, but you know how like you're either sore or you're hurt, like physically?
Yeah, that's one of the two, right? Are you injured or are you sore? Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the same thing, like with the mental toughness thing and then struggling with mental health. You can be a mentally tough player, but you can also struggle with mental health. And I didn't realize that until I was at Heartland, actually, the very last few months of my career, and my coach prioritized mental health so much. I will talk about that coach for the rest of my life. She impacted me so much, and I coach softball now, and I do the same exact things that she did when she was coaching me that had lifelong impact on me.
I'd love to hear some of those.
Yeah. So affirmations were so silly to me at this point in my life, standing in front of the mirror saying, I'm beautiful, I'm good at softball. That felt so silly to me. But at the end of every practice, she had us stand in a circle and we would say something we're proud of ourselves for and then call somebody out on the team for what we're proud of them for. And it seemed so silly at the time. There were girls who would be like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. But we all became more confident because of it. And every month we read some sort of mental toughness, mental health related book. And I took these things so seriously because I was so interested in them.
Yeah.
And then too, like just visualization. This sounds silly, but we would literally like visualize. We would have like 10 minutes a day where we would just kind of lay down in like a meditative state and just visualize ourselves making a great play or thinking about those things that we did really well. And that would translate into me being really nervous going up to bat when there's 2 outs and the bases are loaded and, the scoring runs here. Then before I went up to bat, take a deep breath, I would think of that same visualization I did. And there was more chance I was going to make a good play there. Yeah. So all of those things helped with anxiety while I was playing, the pressure I put on myself. And to this day, though, I use that in every aspect of my life to this day. And it's something that stuck with me and really, really helped me when I was there.
Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mental Mettle Coaching. Parents of athletes know that confidence and belief are fundamental for success. We want them to play without fear and without anxiety, but once those negative thoughts take over, it can derail years of work. Turning that anxiety into belief is similar to building strength and speed. It just takes intentional effort over time. Mental Mettle Coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete. Yeah, if I was going to tell one thing that I think coaches should do more than anybody else, more than any other thing, is the affirmation thing as part of a daily or at least a weekly thing that you're doing. And it's always something I say that I tell them the first time you do it, it's going to be crazy awkward. It's
Yeah.
just going to
Feels
be
so
awkward. It is. You're going to feel silly. You're going to feel, oh yeah, it feels so weird. But it's so useful to hear it in your own voice and to hear it from someone else. Those affirmations, I don't know. We can, I hate to say it like this, but we can trick our brains. We can trick them, and you're going to laugh the first time you say something about yourself that feels like an affirmation, but it's not going to feel true. It's going to feel strange at first, but if you keep it up, your brain will believe it. And quite honestly, it's probably the truth. It's the negative voice in our mind that is more of a liar than the positive voice.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're fine to accept that, right?
Yep. It is so silly at first. Everyone was like, this is so weird. But I always tell people when I tell them to get into affirmations, I was like, just try it for like 2 weeks. You know, like the first few days is going to feel silly. And then the second week going into it, it's going to be like a routine. And then you're going to actually believe without having to say it out loud. So it definitely works.
Yeah, and to hear it from somebody else is just as good. That's great. The visualization stuff, it's that stuff is really cool for athletics because they've done the studies that, like, if you see yourself hitting a softball, right? Like, your brain doesn't know the difference between you visualizing it, visualizing it, and actually doing it. To your brain, it's the same thing. And so you can start to build that neural pathway and feel that excitement that comes with hitting a softball correctly, even when you're laying in bed at night.
Yeah.
And and that's not just me or you talking about it. The research out there is there's so much research about their visualization. Pro athletes do it all kinds of time, all kinds of things like that. I love this. I love that part of the story that you ran into a coach that did those things and it made a huge difference on you.
Yeah.
Because that's what coaching is supposed to be about.
I think back on lifts like all the time. I was like, think about how great of an athlete better of an athlete I could have been if I learned that at a young age. Because all of my career, I can tell you how many times I was in like a high pressure situation and I would just be filled with self-doubt. And when I was playing with her, she was just such a positive person that it rubbed off on all of us. And she knew like when we needed to do this, and she knew exactly what to say to us to make us feel comfortable and confident. Like one time I had a coach, like when I was in a tough situation, call a timeout and tell me something that literally made me have an anxiety attack, basically telling me he didn't think I could score this run. And then in her, she would call a timeout and be like, you got this. Think of this time you made this great play. Like, you have the ability to do this. Like, I'm confident in you. I believe in you. You can, you know? Like, she always knew what to say that made me feel like there's no pressure. And I was just up to bat, a regular at bat. So I just think about that a lot. And I carry that into my coaching too. And I'll have parents reach out and say it's rubbed off in other aspects of their life. It's just like such an awesome full circle moment that we're starting to talk about these things, help other coaches, and they're making that impact from the young age that's going to help them, not even in softball and the sport they're playing, in so many different aspects of their life.
Yeah, I think that's an old school coaching mentality. I'm a lot older than you, so I've been experienced. I've had a lot of experience with it. But it's the old school mentality that you develop toughness by just keep hitting them with a hammer until they're tough, right? And for some kids, for some individuals, it works. It does, but not all. But if you work with positivity, that works on everybody, and that's what I'm trying to get out there. That like if you've got these positive ideas, that works on everybody, right? Because quite honestly, we're not. I mean, just like people have genetic. People are bigger, faster, stronger genetically. It's the same way with our mental health, right? Some people are born they don't have to worry about mental health. It's just they are mentally strong, and some have to work on it a little bit. Doesn't mean that they're less or better or whatever. It's just some of us have to work more than others, right? And I think that's an idea that we need to put out there as well. Yeah. So any other tips and tools that you use, either that you picked up from softball or with your Stay Another Day? Any tips and tools for athletes that you would suggest?
This I was recommended to a long time ago. I don't remember who exactly told me to do this, but I would keep kind of like a journal. When a coach told me something to work on, or they gave me a tip, I would write that down. But for every time there was like something I was writing down that I could work on, I would say like, I did this really well today. I improved on this today. So even though there was things I was working on, I was also making note of the things that I was doing great at that time. So it wasn't just always looking at the, oh my gosh, I suck, I need to get better at these things. I was looking at, wow, look at what I've accomplished and the things I've really focused on and gotten better on too. I would say breath work too. I kind of have engraved in my head now. I don't know what it's called. I cannot think of the word. But there's like a video on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. It shows like the thing like collapsing, coming in, and then coming out for your breath work. So like when I'm starting to have anxiety or a panic attack or something, I have that like a video of it on my phone when I can't do it myself and need to pull it up to help me breathe and calm down. But kind of really focusing on your breathing, even though it's really hard. If I feel like really bad anxiety coming on before it gets to the point of an anxiety attack, I'll really focus on my breathing and then work in those affirmations as well. So silly, in front of a mirror, I will do it. And I really think that works. And then just journaling. Journaling has absolutely changed my life. I use it as a venting thing too, because if you don't keep it in, it gets insanely heavy. And when I journal it feels like I'm telling my therapist it, or I'm, venting to a friend. So I let all of it out, no matter how bad my day was. I'll write everything out. But no matter how bad the stuff I'm writing down is, I will always wrap up with 2 things I'm proud of myself for, 2 things I'm grateful for, and 2 things I love about myself. And then like a general affirmation, like this week will be good to me. So I let all the negative out, then I wrap it up with that positive, because that positive moving forward is going to bring me into the next day with the positive mindset.
Yeah, no, that's a really, I love all of that. The idea that it reminds me of is something I kind of do. I stole from Martin Seligman. If you know him, he's a father of positive psychology. He does the 3 good things exercise, similar to that, where you write down 3 good things every night, that you're grateful for, that you did well, that you're proud of yourself for. It is an exercise in positivity, in not just being positive, but being positive is something we have to develop. Like we have to develop the neural pathways to be able to do that. And people think, well, I did it one time, it's kind of silly, I didn't then you didn't do any good. Like you have to keep working on this. And I've adopted one. I do it with the parents that I work with, the athletes. It's a really good exercise for parents and athletes to do when they get home from practice or a game. Is to say I want a parent to say, hey, I want to point out 3 things you did really well at that game. And then the athlete to name 3 good things, 3 things they did well. We'll get better. We'll work on the things we need to get better at, but we always focus on those too much.
Yeah.
Way too much, right? We're always worried about, especially if you're a type personality, want to get better. The tendency is to focus on those negatives and those flaws and how we want to get better. And we have to do that. But then we have to give ourselves the grace and the positivity as well, or more actually, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me a little bit more about this Stay Another Day and what it's about and what your goal, what your mission is.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different things that I'll mix together, which I think that's so awesome about the brand. But it's just a bunch of different clothing. So we sell like hoodies and sweatshirts. They all say Stay Another Day on it, or have motivational quotes like, I'm happy you're here, be kind to your mind, there's strength in asking for help. But my favorite part of the brand is that 988's pressed into every single one of our items. So it's on the cuff of the hoodies, the bottom of the t-shirts. Sometimes people will ask, oh, like, why is it hidden? It should be more obvious. But when I called that lifeline when I was younger, and it helped me, it was something that I wasn't comfortable about talking about at the time. So I love the idea that I can show it off if I'm comfortable talking about it. If not, I can just flip it down. I don't need to talk about it. But we donate a portion of our proceeds to that lifeline, and we've learned that education on it is super, super important. So when I went back to speak at Normal Community for the first time, I did like an exit survey, and 76% of the students said they never heard about the lifeline before. So I think it's really, really important to educate people on.
I mean, when you say 980, I don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
How about that? Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever you're talking about with the education, you're right on the money.
Yeah,
Right?
I get to tell you about it. This is so awesome.
Absolutely. Tell me about
Yeah.
it.
It used to be a longer number, but they changed it to 988, which is really awesome because it's easier to remember. You can call for yourself, or something a lot of people don't know is that you can call for the sake of another person. There's also a misconception that you can only call like if you're in the act of harming yourself or if you're in like crisis. But if you just need someone to calm you down, talk through something with, help you make a game plan to get better, help connect you to resources, you can call them and they can help you with that. If you don't feel comfortable calling it, you can always text it. But I think it's so important I tell as many people as possible about this lifeline, because even if we're doing well right now, you never know when you or a loved one's going to actually need this resource. And you can call it for yourself or someone else, which is so awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that fact that it's 3 numbers.
Yeah.
That it's right there. It doesn't have to be an immediate danger. And just it's a quick, easy way to do that. I love now that I know that it's on your shirts. That's fantastic. It's a great. Anything else about Stay Another Day? So it's primarily about putting this clothing brand out there.
Yeah. So basically, clothing, yes. My mindset when I was younger is I would always try to look for one little thing and be like, if I get through today, I'd be like, if I see this little message, if I see this. And the thought of it was like, you're standing in line behind somebody and that message reaches you. Your angel sent you the number, whatever you believe in, it ended up right in front of your eyes. And that's giving you the strength that you needed, the message to keep going. But I just thought that would have really helped me when I was younger. And also it's starting conversations on mental health, not only in that moment, but when I'm speaking at schools, I'm telling people about my brand. Something that is so awesome. My favorite part about it is the kids will reach out to me after and say, I showed my mom your brand. I showed my mom the shirt, and I was able to talk to her about mental health because they're showing a shirt that has a semicolon on it. And it's like, this is the great leadway into having that conversation about my mental health with my parent, which was super, super hard to do, but it made it a little bit easier. So that's really awesome. So I go and I speak at as many places as I can. And a big thing for me is the social media. So I'm constantly posting about my journaling, about the books I'm reading, about this I'm doing that's helping my mental health, about something I learned in therapy that I think could help other people. And I think the biggest thing I try to push is that mental health might not ever go away, in the sense of I'm constantly working on it. The healing process is not linear. And it's okay if I slip up and need to take a step back. And so I'm constantly sharing my own slip ups, the things I'm going through. I try to be vulnerable as much as I can because I think vulnerability is beautiful.
I'm with you 100%. The vulnerability, and for people to put it out there, and for us to talk about it, and it just let people it's okay about it. And I love the idea of the shirts being a way to open the conversation, because it's a hard conversation sometimes to start. And like you said, a lot of times people looked at you and thought, well, she can't be having any problems, right? So that makes it harder for you to even start that conversation if people think of that of you. Like, I'm this person that has it all together. And if I want to start talking about I'm struggling with mental health, it breaks down that wall immediately. Yeah. It's like, oh, she doesn't have everything together. And I'm like, but it's okay to not have everything together. I'll be honest with, nobody's got it all together. Right? That's the big secret, right? Yeah.
Too, I think to this day, I'm vulnerable on the social media when I'm having a time where I'm having more anxiety attacks, or I'm starting to slip up into like a depressive groove. I'll say, I noticed that I'm slipping into it. This is what I'm doing every day. This is how I've asked my friends to help me. And I'll share the things that work for me when I need help a little bit. And sometimes I do that because sometimes people look at me and be like, oh, she's better now. She has a mental health awareness brand. She's 22. She's doing good. But I think it's so important to still be vulnerable in this time, because it might look like I have my life together, but at the same time, I don't. I still struggle with mental health sometimes. And it's that thing that's never going to fully go away, but you learn how to cope with it and take better care of yourself and prevent a 2-week groove from being like a 2-month depressive groove.
Right. Well, and I think that's the key, is to having those tools.
Yeah.
Right. So I there's a lot of confidence in that, to be able to say, hey, if I know the tools and I start to slip up and I'm struggling and I'm having some anxiety and I'm struggling, I know the tools to get me out of that. I just need to start doing it, and I need to start practicing a little bit more, and I'll get out of that. I'll get out of that funk, and I'll be all right.
Yeah. And that's where like the asking for help thing works. So every time I notice myself slipping up, the hardest things for me is I'll doom scroll and not get out of bed and just compare my life to everyone else's and just overthink. So in that scenario, I know something that will help me is texting my friend that lives right next to me and being like, hey, can you come over this morning and just sit with me while I get ready? And knowing she's there, I'm like, well, she's here. I'm going to waste her time. So I should probably get up and get moving. Or just like having somebody not do things for me, but be there with me. And when going for a walk is hard, I'll invite my mom or my friend to go on a walk with me. And it makes doing those things, taking care of myself, so much easier.
Yeah, it's an issue. You're talking about the doom scrolling or looking at others. And again, what I said, there's nobody out there that's got it all together, right? There might, if you see somebody, they're really better, they're a lot better at you. They might be better than you at one thing, right? But that's the thing we're happen to see they're doing on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever. But we all have our own struggles and nobody's perfect. And I think that's the beauty in it, right? That's what makes it great. And I think being vulnerable, owning up to that and just knowing that it's a great thing.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things you said there that is key, that is also one of the hard things, and we're kind of talking about it a little bit. You realize that you started to get better once you realized you wanted to get better.
Yeah.
And I think that is the most important step, because somebody has to say, hey, I don't like where I'm at and I want to move forward. I want to move towards this. But I think a lot of people really struggle to make that decision. I need to get better. I want to get better. Yeah. Any tips on how you finally figured that out, or how you get people to do that?
So I feel like my whole entire life up until probably the past year, like even when I was initially starting Stay Another Day, I would have really high highs, really low lows. And I think this happened because I was uncomfortable living like a peaceful life. And so my like upbringing, my childhood was pretty chaotic. There was always something going on. And I was so used to just slipping into depression because it was so comfortable. And then when I would start to get better, I would start to self-sabotage. And I would start to just let myself slip up because it was easier and it felt comfortable. And then I got to a point, it was pretty much like a year and a half ago or so. And I was just like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy. Like, yes, I was getting things done. Yes, I was being productive. Yes, I was doing this. But then also for me, it was when I was starting the brand. So it was like, not like I was living a lie, but I wasn't taking my own advice. And for me, it was like, I couldn't be telling all these people to do this and this to get better when I'm not even doing that myself. I'm not even taking care of myself right now. So I finally found a therapist that was really, really great for me. I have had probably 7 different therapists in my life, and none of them clicked. None of them I felt comfortable telling everything to, or their just therapy approach wouldn't work for me. I would tell them how crazy things were for me and be like, oh, you're doing great. And then I just wouldn't want to go back to them anymore. So I finally found a therapist that I feel great with. And those things that were hard for me to feel comfortable talking about at first, like addressing like the early childhood trauma, I literally will make a list and give to her and be like, can we slowly work into these things when I'm feeling comfortable doing it? But to this day, I go to therapy 2 times a week. It's not that I'm going through anything really crazy in my life right now. It's just more so it keeps me on track. She helps me process my thoughts, process things, stay at a good point. Journaling can do the same thing for you, but I think it's just really getting in touch with how you're feeling and realizing it. So through journaling, I'll realize like, oh, the last 5 days, I had a really hard time taking care of myself. So then I make a list of things I really need to do to try to get out of that. But yeah, you really can't get better until you want to get better. And unfortunately, it took me until probably a year and a half ago to finally get to the point of being comfortable with being at peace and being happy.
Yeah, it's what you talked about, self-sabotage. It's a real, like, you get into that anxiety and depression, you start to get out of a little bit, and you're like, this isn't me. Like that, I get nervous in these situations. Mm-hmm. I get depressed in these situations. That's not me. I'm supposed to act like this, and it takes a little bit. Yeah, you have to make it has to be a bold decision to say I want to do something different. And I think a lot of people never get to that because they really don't like. Not everybody's dealing with suicidal ideation, but a lot of people are dealing with the anxiety and the not feeling well, and they just don't want to be challenged to get out of that.
Yeah. And I think sorry.
No, you're good.
That really, really changed the perspective for me is I wrote a letter to the 17-year-old version of myself when I finally got to the point where I felt like I really, really healed. This was probably like around a year ago or so, not even. But at the end of the letter, I said there's strength within asking for help. The sooner you ask for help and take the time to heal, the sooner you're going to meet the most like happiest version of yourself. And knowing that the best version of yourself is on the other side of you taking that step of asking for help, taking the process. Healing journeys, hard, never ending. But the more you work on yourself and heal, you're going to meet the happiest version of yourself, and you're finally going to make it to the better days. And I don't think I even made it to the better days until pretty much when I wrote that letter. And I was like, wow, like I have healed a lot. Like this feels good. Like it was so hard, but I'm here now.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea. Like I think a lot of people with the mental health stuff, they just don't all like work with a coach or working with a therapist or doing the journaling and stuff like that. They just don't trust that it's actually going to help. But it's a slow process. But once you begin that journey and believe in that process, it's like you said, you become the best version of yourself. And that's awesome. Right.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any questions? What did I not ask you that I should have, Mackenzie?
I don't know. That's a hard question. Let me think. I would just want to highlight the coolest part about our brand is how much we're active on social media. We've made such a impact within our own community, but it's so much bigger than that because I'm on social media and I'm being vulnerable to complete strangers. But what's coming with that is people knowing that they can be vulnerable to that same effect of me in the mental hospital. Hearing other people be vulnerable made me vulnerable. It's allowing other people to be vulnerable. And it's just so awesome how it's leading to conversations around mental health because it'll never be something that's easy to talk about ever. But everyone talking about it, us doing this podcast, this is going to reach somebody and it's going to help. And if everything helps one person, we're making all the difference. But it's just making the general conversations on mental health so much easier over time. Because if you think back to literally not even like 4 or 5 years ago, before COVID, this is not something that would have been talked about as often or openly. And I think it's so amazing that like through the brand and other people, everyone coming together, like together, we truly are making a difference. And I just think it's so awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And I love your message. I love what you're trying to do and just putting it out there and yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I love the conversation. It's great stuff. So make sure I'll have stuff in the links to make sure that we can get a hold of your stuff. But what's your website? How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah. So our website is just stayanotherday.com. From there, it'll be linked to all of our social medias. I'm most active probably on TikTok and Instagram. Our TikTok is Stay Another Day Shop and our Instagram is _Stay Another Day.
Okay, beautiful. I'll put those in the show notes, and if anybody wants to get it, they can get a hold of you. And I'll tell you what, I'll be definitely ordering a shirt. I love the idea, so happy to support it. I think it's a great idea. Just thanks so much for coming on, Mackenzie. I love the story. I love your passion, and I love the topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I thought it was a really great conversation. I loved it.
Oh, same here. Good talking to you.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle Podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle Podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they could still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website and get started on the journey to a more confident and successful athlete with mental mettle coaching. I struggled a little bit deciding what sort of message, what sort of tone I wanted to have whenever I did a recap of that interview, and what message I wanted to put out there and what I wanted to say. And I love the interview. I love Mackenzie's story. I love what she's trying to do. I love the positivity she's trying to put with young people and how they're helping them, and just getting across that message and breaking down that stigma for mental health. And I want to be supportive of that. And I'm really thankful that her company, Stay Another Day, exists, and trying to get the mental health awareness is the whole goal. And I want to be supportive of that. But honestly, I think I kind of get a little frustrated and, quite honestly, a little bit angry when I listen to her story. Because, quite honestly, I know my audience, and I know the type of people I deal with the athletics, and coaches and some parents, and our hang-ups about mental health are part of the issue. And I get angry about that because despite what we say or what we think, there's still so many people out there that see this stuff as nonsense, working on mental health, and see it as a sign of weakness, and make a kid feel like they are less for struggling. I see it all the time. I have had multiple clients or potential clients, a kid or one parent that wants to get a hold of me because a kid is struggling. They're anxious. They're not enjoying their sport anymore. They're on the early stages of what Mackenzie was talking about. And one parent will be like, hey, I need to do this. My kid needs this. And the other parent says, I think it's nonsense. They need to suck it up. They need to get out there, get after it. They'll be fine. And that's, it makes me mad. It upsets me. And I don't care if you hire me or whatever, but it upsets me that they don't see it as a problem. They don't see it as a long-term issue. They want to beat the problem over the head with a hammer and hope the kid comes out fine on the other side. And they don't always. They have trauma from it. They harbor resentment to the coach, to the parent. It breaks down a lot of relationships, and it can even get worse. It leads into more anxiety, depression, who knows what, as she's talking about, to the point that the suicidal ideation. And it happens all the time. We see these high-level athletes that have done so well in high school, and they get into college, they're doing these great things, and then we find one that takes their life, and we're like, oh, but they were doing just fine. They had everything going for them. Well, that's because we didn't open the door for them to talk about this stuff. And if we live in that space and we still allow that conversation to happen, where we tell kids they just need to suck it up and get after it and you'll be fine, we're making it harder for others to come forward when they really need the help. And even when I say really need the help, it's not even that. It's like, oh, it's got to be really bad for me to want to need the help. Look, if you're struggling a little bit with anxiety, or you're not loving the sport like you used to, like she mentioned, it used to be a place of escape, and now it's a place she didn't want to go to. Even if you're early, if you catch that early and start with some mental health exercises, it's not so much about whether or not there's something wrong with you or what this might lead to when you're an adult. It's about, as I say all the time, learning how to face the adversity of athletics in a positive and powerful way to come up on top, so you know how to do that in life. it's exactly what we should be wanting out of kids to do this. And if they're struggling learning how to do that, if they're struggling to learn how to handle the adversity of athletics, we need to give them the tools, not just to chastise them for struggling with it. It's ridiculous, and it is a sign of weakness to think that it's a sign of weakness to come forward when you need help. It takes so much more strength to ask for help than it does to just struggle. And that's the same if it's yourself or you're talking about your kids or your athletes if you're a coach. And knock it off with the back in my day. Well, we just did this and we did that. Your kids, your athletes, your own biological kids, they're not living in the same world you were. They aren't. It's a different world. And we can lament about that. We can complain about that, but we're not going to fix that. It's a different world now with social media, the pressures we put on athletes. All right. So we're talking about, well, in my day, we did this. Yeah. Well, in my day, my first little league practice, I showed up to in jeans and a pair of old slick tennis shoes. And we just goofed off and everything was so much less. And now a kid at that age, that first little league game, that entire game is on Game Changer. It's put on social media. Everybody's talking about if this kid's going to do this and we got to get into this. Well, you're putting these expectations on kids at a crazy young age and then expecting them to just be okay with it. It's nonsense for us to just say, oh, in my day, we did this. They're not in my day. It's a different situation. I wish it was different. I wish we didn't put the pressure and the expectation on athletes like we do. But I mean, the toothpaste is out of the tube. That's just the way it is. But rather than just say, oh, they need to suck it up and get after it, why don't we give them tools to deal with it? And then they're going to be even better off people for it. They're going to learn how to not worry about unrealistic expectations and worry about the thoughts of others and instead focus on themselves. The current state of athletics can be good and can be bad, but we have to address it differently than it was in the day. And if you're an old school coach or an old school parent thinking that way, you got to get past it. You got to get over it. You got to see the world as different. You got to start giving your kids some tools and your athletes some tools to deal with the adversity they're facing, not the way it was when you were playing. And if that's just reading books and learning about the tools and helping your kid with it, then so be it. There's all sorts of places you can find that information. You can go on YouTube. You can find websites. That's the industry I'm in. That's the job that I do. I work with athletes to give them those tools, to give them the ability to face that adversity. And honestly, I'd love it if you contacted me and I help with your kid. That's my favorite thing to do, is to find a kid that a parent reaches out to me and said, hey, my kid's struggling. They're not enjoying your sport anymore. They're anxious, and I want them to get better so that they can handle this sport and handle life better. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I'll be honest, I'm good at it, and we make a lot of progress. And I say I'm good at it, but it's because it's the first time that a kid has worked on those tools. Sometimes if it's like falling off a log, we start working on these tools and it's like the progress is amazing because they've never worked on it before and they've never thought about their own mental health, how to work and think in positive ways. So it's easy. It's not easy, but it just, if you work on it, it'll get better. I say that all the time, that like, if we have a kid, if you're a basketball coach and your kid says, I'm not any good with my left hand, I can't dribble with my left hand, what do? We say, well, start dribbling with your left hand. If you start dribbling with your left hand every day, what are you going to do? You're going to get better at dribbling with your left hand. If a kid is having negative thoughts and can't focus and are very anxious at the plate or in a game or playing volleyball or whatever sport, and they're really anxious, and you say, okay, well, why don't we work on positivity and confidence? And why don't we do drills and tools that will help you build that? Well, the second we start doing it every day, it gets better. It's not magic. It's real obvious. It works. And I would love for you to contact me to help your kid do that, or your athletes to do that. I do the group coaching and the team coaching as well, but it doesn't have to be me. And I struggle with that sometimes because I do a job here that is, I never want to feel like I'm preying on people that need it. I'm trying to help. Like, the situation is what it is. Athletics is the way it is now. And I'm just trying to help kids and parents and coaches in that system the way it is. I didn't create that system. I'm just trying to help them through that. But if you don't hire me, like, hire somebody else. Read some books, watch some videos, do something, but don't just say it's nothing and it's nonsense and they need to suck it up. It's not helpful. It just isn't. And I find you to be a weak person if you're saying that, right? You're not very open-minded, and you're part of the problem. And I would love to see you be part of the solution, and at least be open to some of these ideas. And if you can tell I'm a little bit passionate about this, it's because I am. And I love what Mackenzie's doing with the Stay Another Day. Check out her links, order some stuff. I love what she's doing there. But the fact that it is such a needed thing to be able to be aware of the issue, and to have the 988 on the sleeves, that is a little bit of a suicide prevention hotline. The fact that that's so necessary, and we know, that's such a good thing for kids to have because it's such a problem. Well, it also means maybe there's something we can do about it ahead of time. Maybe we can start to see these problems in kids and start giving them some tools to deal with that. That's my goal, to have them do that. And so check out Mackenzie's stuff, Stay Another Day. If you have questions for me about individual coaching, team coaching, to help develop some of these tools that'll help them be more positive, be more confident, reach out to me. All right. Even if you don't end up hiring me, I'm always here to help and point you to some other podcasts, some ideas that I think would help. And I would love to do that. So again, yeah, sorry if I called anybody out, but I think it's okay too. So that's how I feel about it. So I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. And always remember, forge your metal.